On this episode, we're going to talk about how we put a brain surgeon on a spaceship. We're going to discuss the challenges of using Zoom to allow him to interview remote guests. And we're going to talk about how we overcame some miscommunication and challenges as a team to pull off a really fun production. All that and a lot more on this episode of The Debrief.
This was a really fun, but also really stressful shoot that we did today. The spaceship turned out really great. So we wanted to have this Star Trek inspired theme. Blaise certainly has the look of Jean-Luc Picard. And there he is now, coming in, beaming in. And man, I don't know if it's because I grew up on Star Trek Next Generation. So I don't know if it's that fondness that has me liking this so much, but I really feel like this set turned out really fun and I can't wait for us to dive in and talk about it. So Dr. Baxter is one of the world's most renowned interventional radiologist and he's a really smart doctor and he's really good. And so he's doing this talk in a few days and he was like, Andre, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to bring in these guests. They're going to be from all around the world. We'll Zoom them in and have them come on the set and talk. But I want to be in this kind of fun, spaceship themed, boldly go where no one's going before, because there's so many cool advances that are happening in the neuro space. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to go for it. And so I told Emma, I said, hey, Emma, I need you to help me look for a Picard-like outfit. And you found it. It's perfect, Emma. It worked out really good. How much was this jacket?
I think we found it on Amazon for, I don't know, maybe like $30.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. We had like 4 business days to get it. So I'm glad it came in. And we also bought this tiny little brain pin. I think you can see it. It ended up not working out the way we hoped it would.
It looks so good on the picture.
It looked so good on the picture. And I thought in the back of my mind, like Tyler would be such a good craft for him to do, but then I just didn't end up communicating that. So then we ended up having Tyler create that from scratch, and it ended up.
Well, when they arrived, I mean, it kind of looks more like an earring, I guess, than
yeah,
it's so small,
dainty thing.
Yeah, and it's
very
like,
nice pin.
It is a nice pin. We got some really great gold brain pins now, but it was so funny because I'm like, oh, the big lesson here is like always look at the size dimensions on whatever the thing is you're ordering. I remember a few years back when I was building out the studio, I bought a trash can and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Like it looks so exactly the vibe, and we got it and it's like this big. It was like, oh, right. We should have looked at those dimensions before we hit. So pro tip, buy things online, look at the dimensions before you hit submit. And it's funny. This is a lesson I keep learning as a leader, which is how to not hit the microphone, which is I frequently will apply limitations that the team doesn't have. Like I didn't think that the limitation I had was one really more around time and less about ability, because we already know that Tyler can build anything out of anything. But it was just like, oh man, I don't want to throw that on his plate. Surely we can just buy a little brain emblem and thing and it'll just stick there and it's fine. It's so corny anyway, it's fine. So this was a 2-day shoot, and we shot all of the first day, which includes intro and then 2 interviews that we had. And then we shot the second day, and I guess it was mid-morning of the second day, Tyler, you're like, I could make a brain thing that actually looks good. You didn't say it like that, but you're like, I could make that. And
I was sitting there listening to you guys talking. I was like, I could have made a brain.
If you just had asked. And, it's funny because I was thinking in my mind, the reason why I didn't ask you to do it is it's like, I don't want to add one more thing to the plate. We have so many things going on. And it's like, you know what? Does that matter? Nah, it's fine. We found a brain, but then when we got it and it's like 1/4 of this, I should put it next to our logo. It's like so tiny. It's very small. It would easily fit as an earring. So tell us, let's work through. So I finally, I think you had to say it a couple of times for me to get it and be like, what he's telling me is that he's ready to do this and build it. So show us.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go into something, just to, well, there's other things that we could be doing. And I just kept thinking about it. And then I kind of had a few minutes. I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and kind of find the measurements of it. So I looked online and I started doing, and Andre was like, okay, I see that you're working on that. Go ahead and do that. So here I am using Pages as my poor man's Photoshop. This is my laptop as Lightbox thing. So I got the shape off of Sketchfab is a website that I use a lot because they have amazing 3D models. And so I used a wireframe of the thing. And then I went and found an illustration of a brain and kind of overlapped the two things. And then carved the little brain out of some foam insulation stuff that we had. And that was the easy part, actually.
So I need to interrupt.
Yeah.
So you started doing that. And then I started thinking, oh no, what have I said yes to? Because I'm like, this means a lot of things. This means, because Tyler and I were about to work on scripting. This was very loose. So a key thing about this production was we had the vague idea, right? Be on a spaceship, interview people. This kind of concludes the construct that we had, and we had a time limit. But outside of that, we didn't have a lot of details. And I was feeling this like pressure cooker of, oh no, there are problems here because the team, we're not all unified because we're not trying to be not working together well as a team. It's just we're not sure what we're making right now. And so I'm over here feeling that tension. And then I'm realizing I got to keep going. But then I'm like, oh no, I just totally took Tyler out of this. And he's my word guy too. So like you're better at words than me. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm realizing this means whatever interviews we've shot, we have to reshoot Blaise saying, interesting, great idea. Let me ask the question. Here's question 1. Here's question 2. And I'm like, okay, we can do this. But I found myself feeling a funny set of conflicting things that I want to externalize, where I felt all of that. Plus I saw you start measuring and I was like, oh no, this is going to be good, but slow. And it was an interesting thing of like, but I've already kicked it off into motion. Should I stop this or not? And then I realized like, no, just trust the people, trust the process. We can pull this off. And so I fully let you loose, but it was just a funny set. I mean, all this happened in like, a couple of seconds of thought, but I'm just externalizing that because it's an interesting management problem of like, how much do we do the production, and how much am I supposed to care about this man looking like Star Trek man or not? You know what I mean? It's like, is a derpy little brain on his shirt already good enough? With that said, the end result blew me away, and it was unquestionably the correct answer for the
show. He loved it. Dr. Baxter just totally loved it. He was so excited about it.
So show us. I think we got some more. Sorry to interrupt that.
That's fine. No, it's fine. Yeah. So the day before, I had been goofing around with an old Apple laptop box that we had laying around, and the inside of it is this really cool thick plastic, and so I do that all the time. I'm kind of looking at plastic material and paper and stuff like that. Yeah, there you go. That's it. And as I was working on it, I thought, oh, that plastic would be perfect for the little Delta arrow kind of shaped piece. So I started using that to cut out, and I had to make several different versions because one of the problems I have is, even as a kid, if I would spray paint a model part that I was trying to make, I would always touch it too soon and ended up getting stupid fingerprints on it. And I kept doing that. And I was getting kind of frustrated with myself. I'm like, oh, what am I doing? Then I realized, like, wait a minute, I've only been making Star Trek communicator pins for an hour.
Of my whole life.
Of my whole life. So maybe I have a few iterations I can go through to figure it out. But that stuff works really well, and it cuts really easily, all that stuff, in case you've ever wondered about that. So the problem with this foam stuff, and if you've ever worked with it, you may know this, but if you spray paint it with regular spray paint, it dissolves it, and it starts eating away. So I had created this beautiful brain thing, and I thought I had coated it properly with paint and everything, and I went to spray paint it with the beautiful gold paint, and it started corroding the the foam, so it looked like somebody that had some sort of horrible brain disease that had eaten away chunks of their brain.
Oh no!
And so I had to go back with vinyl spackling and fill it in. And all the whole time, Andre's like, "Hey, what's the ETA on the brain pin?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's working.
It's getting
Just
closer.
working on it." And so I thought, well, you know what? While I'm waiting on this stuff to dry, I'll make a little flat version of it out of the plastic. So I made one that was just a flat kind of profile cut out of a brain with the little delta thing. So I had that going, and I finished that. But it looked derpy. See there, yeah, there it is. And it has a magnet. I had some little neodymium magnets that I put in there so that he could clip it on his tunic. But anyway, that looked terrible. So I just had to wait, and I'm like, just hang on, just don't touch the thing, just leave it alone. And I've had to spray paint them several times just because I would touch the edge. And so we had these chopsticks from a Chinese or a ramen place that we had ordered from, and they were perfect for holding the little pieces so I could spray paint them. There was another a design decision that I kind of made, and that was that the brain had to be gold, even though on the Star Trek communicator pin the delta thing is in front and it's silver. The brain had to be gold, and so that's kind of I took some license with that stuff. But anyway, that's the final version, and it has a magnet in it, and he just loved it so much.
Oh man,
There you go. There's
there
all
you
the
can see the other little brain. As soon as you put it up to, it was like, oh, of course that. Why? How would I have even ever let this tiny little brain make it this far? It's like, of course that's the wrong answer. And of course the thing Tyler did was so good.
So then he's going to New York to talk, and he's going to wear this costume on stage, I guess. And
Wait,
so
show the before. Hold on, we've got this side by side.
yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah.
The other one's like, I don't even know what that is, and I don't know that everyone's going to know what this brain is either. But you know what I mean. Most people are just going to think it's the Star Trek thing.
Man, I think these brain doctors that he's going to talk to are going to be like, "Oh, that's totally a brain." But he loved it. He was like, "Oh, it's anatomically correct and everything."
Yeah.
Anyway, so then I was realizing, oh wait, he's going to be traveling with this thing, and it's kind of delicate. It's not really hardy. So we had these jewelry box kind of things that we had gotten from somebody.
Vive Mars.
Shout out to
Mars. Yeah, shout out to Vive Mars. They gave us these really cool pins. Like, they're really awesome looking.
And then the boxes were just kind of laying around. So I thought, wait a minute, I could put that in there. That way it would protect it as he's traveling so it doesn't get all torn up. And then Andre was like, well, what could it be cut out where it would kind of embed in the foam? And I'm like, of course it could be. Sure. Let me get started on that.
Because you let me loose. Also, this is me doing the camera work. Oh, there's the Vive Mars thing. That's what I'm focusing on. That's what it is.
Yeah, the pin's laying over there.
Get
on
autofocus
the
to do this thing.
upper
There
left.
it is. Yeah.
It's a really
It's
cool
like
pin.
he cut out the shape.
Yeah.
Of course he
So
did.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, and then, okay, so I got it in there and realized, oh no, the magnet that's stuck on the back makes it sit up above it and it won't settle down in there. So I had to cut out a little hole to put the magnet so that the magnet would fit down in there and it would all kind of nestle down in there nicely. And I used a little piece of black velvet or whatever that is to fill in the little round hole for the magnet. Anyway, Dr. Baxter loved that even more. He was just like, and I think he got it. We wanted to have a picture made where we were standing together, like he was getting some kind of award or something. Yeah, there it is.
There it is. Look how good that looks. It looks so good.
I think my favorite little detail though is that you did put the socially sticker on it.
Sorry about
Mars. We love you still.
Yeah,
Look,
sorry.
I have the wonderful little.
We had.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah, that's that.
Really cool box.
It's
Anyway,
really cool.
we had.
Cool pin.
I can only find one sticker. And so I put that on one of the boxes and then messed it all up and had to start another one. And thankfully, it peeled off very, very nicely and went right on the new box, just perfectly. Very high quality stickers, I'm guessing.
We have some more stickers.
So anyway, that was a lot. Just to see the joy on his face.
Do we have the picture of the two of you getting the award or whatever?
It is on my phone.
That's so funny. But isn't that funny though? That turned into something. He's going to keep that thing
Forever.
in that box, and he's going to stick it in some drawer, but he'll keep it. He's not going to, there's no way he's ever throwing that away now. Isn't that funny? And it's like, it's a cool, so way to go. Thanks for being excellent as always.
Sorry it took so long.
No, it didn't. We made it all work. We'll talk through that. But
Yeah, well, I was going to say I had a real sappy attitude because I'm like, holy crap, okay, we're redoing everything. I'm super frustrated. And then I saw him walk out on stage and I was like, Oh yeah, that's it's worth every piece of it. In fact, before he left, I was like, "Hey man, Halloween's right around the corner."
You are
There you
set
go.
forever. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, he was so happy.
It's like you gave him a jewel, like a really nice gift. So anyway, yeah. And then Isaac, while I'm talking, can you pull up just the actual shot of what this looked like in the production, just so we could kind of see that again now that we know that it's this little Star Trek brain action going on here. So yeah, so you can see like the end result. It just sells it. It's so good. It's so clean. He looks so Picard like. He asked about taking his glasses off, and I'm like, no, leave your glasses on. That's you. Hey, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. Look at how those glasses cut back over to it. Beautiful. Not a reflection to be seen, but still a nice catch light.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting about this, I noticed this right at the end of the day. They're black on these sides, but they're a glossy reflective blue, right? Glossy reflective blue. What I think I noticed near the end of the day is that it was kind of getting keyed a little bit, but you don't notice because the background behind him is dark blue. I don't know if I'm right about that, but I noticed, wait, is that happening?
That's great. Keep that up for just a second longer. Let's look at the background. So one of the things we did do, this is a set we purchased from the Unreal Marketplace, but we did change the coloring. So we put some of that red behind him. It was kind of like an orange color. And was the set already blue, or did we change?
No, we ended up changing it. It was orange.
Orange, yeah. But I mean, the blue color of the helixes
Those
were
orange.
Oh, orange. Yeah. So then we made that blue, right? So that was really nice. Now we have all these colors, and we played around a little bit with throwing some more splash of color on him. And it was cool, but to me, it's just so hard to know when you're kind of pushing into too much. So I opted for more of just a straight coloring on that because the blue just felt a little too harsh. So there is a little bit of blue kind of right in that area right there. So there is, I mean, I know you're going to see this massive highlight right here, but in addition to that, in this area right below that, yeah, thanks. That part right there does have a little blue reflection.
And when you turned it up, when you turned the blue up, it got really, really blue so fast.
Yeah. And I know I could have probably brought a little blue onto him here. And I felt like this orange or red light was really shooting down more, and it was so far away, it just didn't seem reasonable, because I did try to play with a little splash of red right there, but it just felt too much. And so it felt too outside of the span of what would be reasonable there. So but all that to say, by matching this, again, we talk about this over and over, the more we can make in this case, the outfit perfectly works. Can we hop over to his wide shot of him?
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Yep. But of course, the more we can make all of that match together, the more uniform, no pun intended, it makes everything work. The uniform makes it uniform. Maybe that's a saying that I just made up. But yeah, so here we can see, and even these little red lights right here, just some little splashes of red. And then we didn't actually change this guy back here, but to me, it was like, that's fine. It's like way over there, far off. Who knows?
That's the other room.
That's the other room with the orange lighting. There he is jumping in. So this was us practicing making him like beam in, and then we did a little Star Trek beam in effect. Okay, so
look at his feet.
I know.
Amazing.
So good. It looks so good. And in the light motivation here, what Morgan did is we brought in another one of these guys right here, which it generates some amount of light. If you can just go back to that shot that we were just on. So this guy right here is, I'm pretending like it's emanating light that's kind of lighting him up. But we also have this concept of lights in the ceiling that are shooting down, right?
Yeah, everything's very top-down lit.
It is. And so because of that, we had to be really careful of ensuring there weren't like shadows, projecting out, because we had some rim lighting hitting him that would, in fact, make these shadows go long that way. So Jay or Tyler, one of you kind of barn doored those off. So it ends up just being some shadowy bits, but there's not really a very clear direction of where that's going. Don't forget, shadows are critical. You have to have shadows on the floor in order to fully sell. that foot is touching the floor. So make sure you do that.
Hey, and just like last debrief, I talked about how like sometimes the barn doors don't cut it. So I feel like I actually don't know how we operated without our Lecos that we have now, because that's the magic trick. And speaking of that, one of those rim lights that I had to cut off that shadow, if you'll cut back to it, it was blue. So we had like, because like the room is blue, right? But we changed it back to 4200, I believe, because it filled it in. It didn't change his skin color, and it just felt a lot more natural than it did when it was blue, because the blue was just like too much. It was like, oh, okay, guys, we see you're trying to make it look like he's in the room, not look like he's actually.
Yeah, and I think also this is going to be shown at a conference, like a medical doctor conference, and so it's going to be in a
Hilton.
Yeah, right. It's
Like
going to be at a hotel, right? And so also we had to, because at first we had a little darker, a little moodier, and it looked super cool. And if we were making Dr. Blaise Baxter the movie, we would probably have gone there and lit this just a little different. But this is going to be shown on the projector screens or whatever way in this conference room. So I needed this to feel, you can cut over to that. It needed this to feel bright, like he needed to be clear and visible. Hey, one last thing we did is we ended up path tracing. Morgan, talk about the path trace, how we ended up kind of shooting the backgrounds. And I don't know if it was you or Isaac that did the bubbles.
Yeah, we can kind of talk about that. So I'll hop in here. We ended up path tracing this in Unreal Engine and then exporting that out as a still image, in which Isaac brought that in, and we were using a bit of Fusion to kind of add in these water effects back there on the helix back there.
Those little bubbles.
And we ended up wanting to layer it a little bit differently. I don't know if we ended up cutting it to kind of be behind some of the objects, but we wanted to do a depth pass. And that's something that Unreal's not very good at currently, is the blurring. It wants to blur everything in the background and not anything in the foreground. So you don't get that split effect like you would in real life.
And like you can get some of it when we hit it just on the right, like just on the right spot, like we can get it, but it's difficult. Let me see real quick. I'm going to see if I can put in
what you guys are talking about while Isaac's pulling that up is essentially what happens is the pencil is going to be brought to you by Apple Pencil Pro. The shot as it comes in, it hits, okay, we're just going to go with let me focus on my hand. It's going to hit this plane, and then everything after this plane is a certain level of focus. And so what we want to have is a little more graduation between here's the plane and before. So right now it's just very much everything's in focus, and starting here, everything's starting to go out of focus, kind of like this camera's doing. And so, so what we're really looking at is like, okay, how can we better approximate sort of some of these more micro distances before and after the camera, in front of and behind, because right now it's very much a plane that happens. So that's kind of what
and it kind of needs to be a box. 3ds Studio Max does this illustration of a box, and it shows, hey, everything inside this box is going to be in focus, and then there's fall off in the background and fall off in the foreground if you had any foreground elements. And Unreal just has this single plane that we can turn on and show. But again, it's only applying that depth of field pass to the background. And of course, with DLSS and some of the stuff we're trying to do for performance gains, it kind of falls apart. And I've just noticed this with video games. Again, Unreal Engine is a video game engine. They don't typically have a lot of cinematics that they're doing in engine. They're doing a lot of that in post with 3ds Studio Max or something like that. Not Unreal Engine natively.
Yeah, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, great game, and I noticed this exact thing happen. They went to a cutscene that was a lot of transparency, a lot of depth of field, and they get in this elevator and it like fades to black and fades back up, and instantly it's like you can watch this transformation of like, oh, those are higher quality models, all this stuff. And so the thing that I've noticed in video games that is the hardest to do right is depth of field, and that's just hilarious that's the thing we want to do really well. If we go over to Apple TV here, here's my horrible node tree of Isaac learns how to use Resolve Fusion for the first time. So there's a lot going on here, but this is basically how it all ended up breaking down, where what we're doing is we kind of like, this is just for this one side shot to get the little bubbles onto here. So the bubbles go in, and then they're getting blurred, and we're doing some diffraction on them and all this stuff to make it where it just kind of glows and looks, cool and movement-y. But without it, it felt very limited. So it was really crazy to kind of see how it all came together there. But
I should say, in a perfect world, while you're showing that, we had looked at, there's the bubbles kind of doing their thing.
You can see how they're so low frame rate because I'm doing this on my laptop.
Yeah. So we could have used Unreal Engine because it was doing a little animation on the little helix thing and all of that. But we were path tracing. So that takes, I don't know, I'm going to call it 20 minutes per frame. So we didn't have that kind of time because we finished that set, as you would imagine, the morning of the shoot. So we didn't have extra time in there to do that. So this was a much faster process to just add in a little movement and a little motion. And that's what I'm always trying to do on these plates, is if I can just have it be alive, if there's something that could just be a little bit alive in it, that would really, it just adds a lot to the production for sure. Tyler, we were talking about how Blaise was so creative on this. So he was asked to give this talk, and what a traditional doctor would do is like just talk, right? Get on stage and communicate and talk. But he said, no, I think what I want to do instead is also a couple things. One, share the love, right? And not just make it about him, which he could easily have just done his own innovations and talks. But instead, he decided to pick some of the top doctors around the world that are focusing on this piece and bring them all together to kind of share their vision for the future, which was super cool. And I think very indicative of a great leader who's not just trying to make it all about me, instead sharing. What was your kind of impression on that?
He's just so creative. And it was so cool because we were kind of putting together the script, and it seemed really important to say at the beginning, hey, we're going to hear, he says, hey, we're here in space or whatever, we're going where no one's gone before. And we're going to hear from 6 doctors, and they're all going to share the things that they're working on. And I thought that would be great. Andre, you agreed that would be great for the audience members because they're like, oh, great. We're not going to have to sit and listen to 40 minutes of a doctor talking about something, And of course, Blaise Baxter is so funny and creative. Mm-hmm. So then he had each of these people, they're like literally all over the world, and we interviewed them over Zoom, and they're all leaders in their fields and talking about the advanced things that they're doing, which to me, I guess if I was in that field, would be kind of inspiring. Who knows what thoughts will be sparked in the audience members' minds as they're hearing about, they're talking about things like blood-brain barrier, like using sound to get drugs into the brain and all kinds of exciting things like that. But to turn his 40-minute speech into a kind of a show, like watching a Star Trek episode and interviewing their colleagues. What a really creative thing to do. And we were kind of laughing toward the end as we were thinking about the context. Here he is, a world-renowned brain surgeon. He's going to be on stage in a Star Trek uniform. And Andre, you were like, he was asking, well, should I say that? And you were like, well, you're going to be in a Star Trek uniform, so you might as well just go all the way.
You might as well just
say
go ahead
things,
and go.
So
yeah.
Anyway, what a fun thing to bring into that world of neurosurgeons, brain surgeons.
It demands attention.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it starts, the opener and everything, we have a great opener and all of this. It just is like, what is happening? Where it's not just someone saying like, here's the clinical trial, here's what we did, here's the details, but instead it's actually going in and very creatively talking about it. And then this is just another interesting human psychology side note. He's not doing it for this reason at all. But something I've seen about great leaders is that they're not afraid to show others and kind of elevate others. And what's interesting is in the process of elevating others, it elevates the leader as well. So it's like, if you're trying to elevate, I don't know. First of all, I don't think that should be your motive, but just go with me for a second. If that's trying to happen, the best thing you can do is bring others along and highlight them. And that's, in a weird way, that's what I'm trying to do with the debrief, right? And all of the stuff we're trying to create on YouTube is like, wait a minute, this doesn't need to be the Andre show. Like, I'm very interested in having everyone else show off what they're capable of. And in the process of that, again, this is not the motivation, but in the process of that, it also elevates my leadership as well, because it's like, wait a minute, if all of these people that are surrounding are all doing this level of excellence, then everybody's great. It's all doing good. So he's, in a weird way, elevating himself even further by stepping off stage a little bit and bringing it, tossing it over to these other just amazing world-renowned doctors.
Yeah, everybody's going to be talking about this thing forever.
It's the only thing they're going to remember.
I mean, if you're on it, you're going to tell everybody to watch it. And if you're there, you're going to be like, get in here, come in here. You're going to see me on the screen.
The last thing that's going to happen at the very end of this, because we can say this because this will come out after this event happens, but he's gonna beam out, right? So at the end, we're going to make him beam out of the spaceship, and then he's going to be in the audience. He's going to walk up to the lectern, and then the spotlight will spot on him to kind of beam him into the actual audience, into the presentation on the front. So then he could say a couple of closing words. So that means, and he's going to wear this same hilarious outfit with your amazing Star Trek your brain communicator.
That's right.
And so now, I mean, it seems like the celebrity from the show, this is not his intention, but I imagine what's about to happen in a couple of days is everybody has to talk to him. They have to, because he's dressed up like Jean-Luc Picard. It's like you have to talk to this guy. Anyway, so I can't wait to hear the reactions from the people. And they're going to be really inspired. I mean, the things we heard and the innovations that are happening and the understanding that's being unlocked in this video, it's massive. I bet. Amazing. Yeah, I think if they only get to see one thing, if they see this video, it'll be mind unlocking, at least for whatever the different doctors' specialties are. They'll know who to kind of follow and push into more for the things that they're focusing on, which was really cool. So that's all the great stuff. There was a few challenges as well. So thanks for hanging around. Now you get to hear some of the drama. So Blaise and I are really good friends. We've known each other for a long time. And so Blaise kind of ran this all just through me. So it didn't make its way through the normal channels of how we onboard a client. And so because of that unique relationship, he just kind of kept dealing with me. And there's a reason why we've set up some other people to talk to our clients. I'm a great guy, but I may not have all the details fully fleshed out, and I'm much more accommodating to ridiculous and exciting ideas. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh yeah, a spaceship. Oh, we're totally going spaceship. That's great. As soon as he said maybe it could be in space, that's all he had to say for me to just fully launch into that mode. So that's fun and neat, and we created something magical and exciting. However, in the moment of the past couple of days, this is a 2-day shoot. We just finished it yesterday. In the past 2 days, it definitely created a lot of tension and a lot of drama. And so I want to own certainly my part about that. And then I'd love for us all to kind of talk about what we were feeling, things we could do better, all of that. So essentially what happened is 2 terrible things all at once. Number one, Blaise had this idea. He shared it only with me. And then I got busy and I shared some of it, but I had a list of priority things. And the first one was well, we have to have a spaceship. And I didn't share a lot of other details at that point when I probably should have, because I'm well, if I don't have a spaceship, none of the rest of this works. So I have to have the spaceship right now. So I got super kind of focused in on spaceship land, which was great, but I should have spent, hey, hang on. Let me just paint the picture as I know it so far. The second thing that along that was Blaise had told me some of the details, but he didn't know either how many doctors we're actually going to end up with. So this was a little bit of a challenge, and that's because these are literally the most popular doctors in the world in their thing. And even as we did the past couple of days, they weren't always able, of course, to show up on time, because it's well, it was either let this person die to do your Zoom call or save the person's life, right? So it's of course, save the person's life. We'll figure it out. So, so that had a lot of fluidity around it. And then there was just the nature of the actual shoot of what is it going to be and how will the doctors be? Will they be interesting or bland? And what will we have to do? So all those variables create a lot of variables. And then part 2 of this is then I ended up spending an enormous amount of time in between the Zoom guests talking with Blaise. So it was like, oh man, I need to catch up. There's so many things I need to tell him about and I need to hear about that's happening in his life. And so what I should have done is come and say, hey, Blaise, I want to talk to you about all these things. Give me 10 minutes to go talk to the team to make sure they have a clear understanding of the world as we understand it right now. So, because it was ever evolving and changing. So I had a series of information bits that I had only that you guys didn't have and had no way to know. And that's unfair to kind of put you in that situation where it's like, I don't know, we're trying to build a thing, but it's super unclear how it's supposed to work. Where I had already figured out, I didn't like some of Blaise's delivery on his first time he was talking to the doctors. I knew I wanted to re-record that anyway, which let me unlock the ability to let Tyler go build the communicator badge because I knew I was just going to reshoot those pieces anyway. No one else knew that. And I knew that we had a strict time limit of the overall video, but I hadn't done the math to sit down and kind of math this out to figure out how long everyone should talk. I just hadn't had a chance to do that yet. So that didn't happen until like day 2 when I started realizing, oh no, we don't have any idea how long these people should be talking, what they should be doing. And then the last piece that kind of really started amping us off onto a wrong foot is I took the job of bringing on the Zoom guest, which would have been fine. And in a normal world, I would have been able to onboard guest number 1. We go through their Zoom settings and make sure they're in HD, and we turn on their sound for musicians so that it gives us less Zoom processing. So our audio engineer can process the audio more accurately, and a couple other, just kind of like looking around lighting and things like that. So I'm doing that, but that's for our guest number 1, who was like over an hour late for very good reasons. But by doing that, guest number 2 pops on their time, which is an hour later. So suddenly I'm trying to onboard guest number 2 who's showing up on time and trying to give things in motion so he's not sitting waiting. And then I realize, I'm like, are we rolling? And then everybody's kind of like, I guess we're going to hit record. We don't know what we're doing. And then I'm realizing, oh no, I have not communicated well. I have to talk to this Zoom guest number 2. Y'all have got to record. And I really put you in a bind. So that was just really poor leadership on my end. I should have better articulated some of that. And I think what we ended up doing, and I think it was on day 2 that we did this, or maybe the end of day 1, we started putting a timer in front of the clients, the other doctors that he's interviewing, to go through the sections. That dramatically helped. But the whole process, I feel like everybody felt extremely unsure of what it is we're even making or how. So I don't know. I'll open the floor. I've said enough words there, but there's the context of my end of that. What were y'all thinking and feeling?
I think for me, I was directing, and I didn't even know we had a script or questions. I wasn't exactly sure how everything was going to happen. So at first, that was a surprise. Second was the timer function. So Isaac and I ended up doing really well and working together and figuring it out. But at first, we're just throwing a timer up, and they're answering the questions, and I see, hey Jay, they have to be between 5 and 6 minutes, and I'm like, oh well, that one went for 13. Oh, and they're gone.
Well, and you only had the timer of the full recording from
right
when we started asking questions to when we stopped, and when he was asking questions, there would be kind of some downtime from Dr. Baxter, just kind of like, well, okay, yeah, so we should go to the next question. Actually, I want to add in this extra question. Like, obviously, there's downtime, so you had no idea. It's like, how long were their answers? And you're like, less than however long the video was.
Yeah, so that was frustrating. But what did happen at the end was we realized that we should show the doctors the timer. And if any of them ever watch this, thank you so much for going from a doctor who could talk hours about their specific field and us being like, you got 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Right.
Hope you do good. And then also we've talked about this timer in past debriefs because I know you all have subscribed, liked, and watched every single one. But I have a timer here on my stream deck. So what Isaac eventually said to me was like, hey, start the timer when they're answering the questions, hit stop, don't reset it. And when we pick up the next one, you can hit start again. So that where the doctors had their timer, but then we actually knew where we were with them and the length of actual content that we were going to slide into the production. So at first it was very frustrating and sort of like I think we all sort of felt like in the dark a little bit, but after the first two, I think we sort of like, once we figured those two timer pieces out and we knew what we were doing, it got a lot better. The second part was Tyler's freaking good at making stuff. So the whole time he's making those things, in our heads, in mine especially, I'm like, we're recording this whole thing, re-recording this whole thing, sorry, in specific parts. So we go to re-record those things, and all I know is we're re-recording what I have a script for. I haven't talked to Andre or anybody else about any other things that they're over there doing with AI and script writing and all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, trying to work with Blaise on how to blend these two guests together so that it doesn't feel like this just like hard cut next person. Whoa, you never really ended with the last person kind of really awkward ending. So, but eventually once I found out from Andre that they were over there working on those pieces, first I threw a little hissy fit and told him I wasn't going to edit it, which I own. That was I sort of overreacted, but in the moment, it's like, hey, it's your job to make sure this thing is going well and that they're saying the right things. So I'm like sitting here trying to run a timer, thinking about what is supposed to be said so that this thing doesn't suck at the end of it. Because if it did, man, the set's so good, the costume, all of that is so good. And what he's doing and how he's doing it and being different from all the other doctors who may just be on stage pointing at a PowerPoint is also good. So I just felt this pressure of like, man, this has to sound awesome. And then on top of that, I had to have him bring his A game on the energy that he was bringing. And he did a really good job after we sort of like talked through how he was going to present and give that energy so it didn't come off very stale and boring. But yeah, you can, all those things I just word vomited onto a plate, if you just wrap them up in a ball and stuck it in my head, that's what my brain was at the time. But once we worked through what was going to happen next, once I apologized for being a little child and saying, I don't want to edit this. And then once we got everything else kind of in a row, it went really good. Now, the editing is where the real pain point is going to be.
We barely started.
I'm still not editing it.
You won.
He won.
Well, what's funny is I'll kind of jump in here is while you guys are all panicking about the time with the doctors, specifically during the Zoom interviews, I'm sitting here going, that's not a problem at all because you can cut the interview. We've got the Zoom guests by themselves. We've got Blaise by himself. We've got a super source. That's fine. We can, I'd rather have too much and cut back than have too little.
Yeah.
Now, that may be my TV brain because we had to do these 1-minute health commercials with a local hospital and the doctors would go for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm used to cutting it down to a minute.
I think
so
where
wasn't where I was panicking.
Where I struggle with that is I'm not a brain surgeon. And I don't know half the words they even said.
Like, I don't even know how to
Blaise
say
is
that.
just blowing through these words where I'm like, is that a thing? I have no idea.
Every fourth word was an acronym.
And so I'm like, okay, yeah, we could cut out the second question and the second piece to make the time, but like, what if that was the most important thing?
Right.
What if nothing else he said really mattered in comparison to that? And you're probably right, but my brain is like, how do I know I'm not going to totally screw this whole thing up by trying to take chunks out or figure it out?
Right. I felt that too. And that's why I was trying to get us to make it even shorter, Morgan, because I knew that Blaise is going to come up on stage afterwards.
Yes.
And I know he's only been given 5 minutes or whatever. So it's 45 minutes. We're trying to stay within. There's probably a 5-minute buffer. But I'm like, if this thing ends up being 40 minutes, Blaise can get up and talk for 10 minutes. Like he could make up the difference in person where what you're saying, Jay, it's like, I don't know. Is that the revolutionary part? I don't know which one of the flux capacitor 4,000 words that you're using. It's like, I don't know, maybe. So yeah.
It was my impression on as I was over there sculpting away on the little thing that some of the doctors were hitting their 2-minute marks, like nailing it.
Oh, they were killing it.
Yeah, and what's interesting to think about is a lot of these guys have done a whole lot of pitching to people. Who knows, in what setting? But they're always kind of explaining things, and it seems like they have figured out how to say, I'm going to say everything I need to say in this little tiny short time frame. It seemed to kind of work out pretty well for some of them.
It did. And I'll say shout out to Blaise too, because for us to tell these doctors, hey, you got 1 minute and 50 seconds, that feels very abrasive. Blaise worded it. I guess Blaise is a doctor, and Blaise is friends with all these guys. Like
right.
he's saying, well, hello, Dr. So-and-so, but when the camera's off, he's like, all right, Ferd, good to see you, bro.
Yeah.
Like they're friends. So he was able to lay on the fact that, okay, hey, we do have a time limit. If I could get you to hit these points and get it within under 1 minute and 50 seconds, do you think you can? And most of the time they were like, yeah, no problem. And like a lot of the times it was like, here's 1 minute and 50 seconds. And we had a countdown timer. I'm looking up, it's weird, but I'm looking up at a screen where the timer was. And like, we would still have 45 seconds left when they were done with their question. So like, again, I've already said this, but shout out to them, because that helps us a lot in having a nice buffer in the amount of time that we have. Plus, we don't want Blaise to get up on stage and run up there and, okay, the good video is done. Okay, I got 3 minutes to say what I've said. Now I feel like he may have a comfortable amount of time to close it. And also you'll see at the end, he literally says like, okay, thanks so much. Oh, look at the time. I've got to be somewhere. And he like taps his thing. He's like, beam me up. So he's going to beam me up, and the video is going to go off, and then he's going to walk up on stage and close it. So that gives him it's almost hybrid. Like it is a video, but it also is him being there on stage delivering the final piece to let him close it out. And that took a little bit of stress off of us at the end of the video, having to tie it up, wrap it up, and put a bow on it.
I think what I felt the most here is that we don't normally shoot movies. And what I mean by that is that, like, we shot this whole thing out of order. We, one doctor would go on, and it's like, well, that doctor may go after this doctor that's 3 doctor interviews away. So it's like, normally that's not how we shoot things. We shoot a lot of this, like, here's video 1, video 2, video 3, and those aren't compiling into each other or feeding into each other at all. And so we don't have a single system built for that. We don't have a single answer built for any of that. And like Andre said, we hadn't talked about it. We hadn't discussed what the purpose of this whole thing was. And so I think some of that led us to this kind of like, okay, we need to have them count down their answers, but like, how is it 2 minutes per answer? Is it 1 minute? How long? How many questions? We had one doctor in particular who had 2 segments where they had 2 sets of questions that were listed as question 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was like, oh, he has way more questions than this other doctor. And so he has interviews 1 minute longer than the rest of them. And so some of that, we didn't have the script in a place where we were all looking. I still don't actually know where the script for these questions were. And we didn't outline our day other than we knew this doctor's showing up. And so I think something that I felt is that we needed to have some meeting of the like brief explanation, but we also needed to then have the, okay, hey, like Andre saying like, hey, I have to step out for parts of this. You all need to figure out how we're going to fit this into this time limit.
Yep.
And then that could have given us some agency to figure out, because I think what kept happening is we'd be kind of just waiting for Andre to be back, because we're like, well, he knows what's going on. And then he'd be back the second we're starting. And now we're like, oh, wait, we still don't know what's going on because he's just going.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not used to shooting in this thing. And there was some stuff I realized the longer I've thought about it, we could have been doing, like, oh man, we should have markered every time they started answering a new question.
Yep.
Because if we had known from the beginning we were going to replace Blaise axing it, hi, apparently I have a new accent. Asking the question. If we had known we were going to, I think I was thinking Blaise's asking the question. If we knew that we were going to cut that every time, then we could have just gone, oh, here's just the clips of the people answering the questions. We know exactly where those are.
Yeah.
And then now we know, oh, here's the list of questions. We could have written down, oh, he added this extra question in. All that stuff we didn't do because we didn't know that we were going to need to do something else in the future.
Hey, inside of the drama, I did have a thought, though. I remember when we were figuring out Zoom for the first time on a live event. And I remember how it was like, what are the settings? Okay, we'll have to figure this piece out. And it took a lot longer. Now, besides some doctors having to stack a chair on top of a cafeteria cart
and I should have
balance
gotten
their
that footage.
phone so that they could talk with one of the coolest backgrounds from Hawaii that we've ever seen, which can be difficult. And dealing with people who don't do this all the time can be very difficult of like, hey, can you move the thing out of frame for us? And they're like, sure. And it's like still in frame. You're like, can you do it? And they're like, okay. And it's like, okay, I've asked 4 times. We have to move on. But Andre, obviously the Zoom wrangling, it's here, let's cut to this real quick. This is what I'm talking about. So was
maybe I should hop in real quick.
Yeah.
And Isaac, you could cut over or somebody
what I was gonna say real quick,
yeah.
just to, and I'll let you have it.
Sure,
is it went from like back in the day figuring it out to now I'm not totally involved, so I don't think it's a completely smooth process, but it is starting to feel much more streamlined, and it feels like we totally know what we're doing with the proper settings, and then being like, hey, can you move this way so the light's over here and it looks better? So that whole process, I feel like we have down pretty much.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, so here's a couple things that I've learned. Don't settle. So the doctor, I mean, the problem is everybody, basically what I've realized is everybody we're bringing in on Zoom is somebody important. They're so important that they can't fly in to be here because they can only give us 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And so we need to understand, like, these people are important. The challenge with that is these people are busy. And so this particular doctor, he is actually, is it Hawaii where he is?
Mm-hmm.
So he's in Hawaii, and we can kind of shut over to the final shot. So that's what the shot looks like.
One of the best Zoom shots.
Yeah, really pretty, you know? All right. So that's the shot. But coming back to me, I just wanted to say, like, come back to me. That what's interesting is his first shot was just exactly the doctor hospital room that you would imagine he has as an office, you know, with exactly the color walls and everything you can imagine a hospital office room looking like. That's what it looked like. And it was just this very, very bland background. And so I just said to him, I'm like, man, listen, this is fine. So this is the interesting dance. What you have is fine, because I'm going to ask them to change it. And if they can't change it, then the whole time they're thinking like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this because this looks ugly, right? So I have to affirm, like, this will totally work. I am just curious, is there anywhere else that I should ask you that, you know, how do I say it? I'm just curious because I've learned to just ask this question, because sometimes there is there an even more beautiful location to put you in? And by saying even more beautiful, it's saying like, hey, where you are right now already is beautiful. I mean, beautiful was a big stretch, but that's how I say it. And then from there, he's like, oh, well, actually, he says, up on the whatever floor where the elevators get off, that looks awesome. And I can get there in just a couple of minutes. And I'm like, dude, let's do it. So he does it. He goes up there, but he's holding the phone. So like now he's going to do the whole interview with him holding the phone. It's like, this is not going to work. And so I'm like, okay, dude. So he obviously finds, oh, you have footage of what it looked like before. We could pull that over.
And you talking to him.
Yeah. So there's me talking to him. But so here you can see the first thing with some random chair in the background. It's, you know, it's very just like, here's the doctor.
Where he does his transcription.
Right.
Whatever.
And it's fine, right? It's a fine thing, but it's just like, and that's what I look like to him as I'm telling him like things that I want to do and whatever. So that's enough of that. Thanks. So what I would say is, then he brings in a cart, but now he's looking down. You know, everybody has the camera down here, and because they're thinking of this like Zoom. And so one thing I've realized is when we tell people it's Zoom, there's kind of this like acceptable standard of what a Zoom call is like. And so it's like, oh, it's on Zoom. I could just do that from my phone. And then it's sitting on the table and they're just, you know, looking down at you. And it's like, okay. And so he does that. And I'm like, okay, next thing. Is there any way to make it taller? And what was awesome about this doctor is I mean, he's literally standing right outside the elevators. If you cut back over to my little picture that there's the elevator right there. So like, and he's standing on the other side. He's standing over here. I don't, just kind of probably about to fall over. So he's over here doing his thing. And, this elevator's opening and stuff, but it all worked out just fine. But I'm sure it was hilarious looking. But like, how cool that he was willing to do this and not be like too ego to be embarrassed by the chair on top of the moving cart of the thing. So I guess
that's Hollywood.
Yeah, that's Hollywood, baby.
He was really excited about it too. He was kind of into it. He was like, trying to think of ways to, okay, wait a minute, I can do this.
Yeah. But listen, the thing is, I have to push.
Yeah.
So I need you to hear, everybody, our team, especially, and anyone watching, like, you have to push, because it's not like he was like, oh, totally, like right away. It's kind of like, I'm here and I can do this. And then every step of the way, it's like, okay, that's good. Is there any way you can make it taller? Anything sitting around that you could kind of bring in? So, we had another doctor later in the day, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. Another doctor, and his room, and it was like the lighting was like a light straight down and just super unflattering right here in his face. And so I got him to turn off the lights and bring in a lamp and move this around and go find a camera and make it taller. And you just have to be willing to do that stuff. In all things in filming, one key thing it's taught me is don't be afraid to be bold and direct with your ask. Because at the end of the day, we're responsible for how they look and sound. And so, I'm pushing on, do you have a microphone? Do you even have this? And so anyway, the end result, I think we got a good thing out of it for sure. But it doesn't come without some tension of validating where they are, but then pushing them to because I've had many times where it's like, just turn the camera and it's like, oh, well, there's a beautiful view outside. That's way better. So don't be afraid to do that when you're asking somebody, even somebody remote. Which leads me to one last thing that I wanted to make sure and cover, which is just around film kits that we can send to clients. So I definitely want us soon to spec out kind of a small, medium, large version of a kit that we can have ready to go and send out. So if you've made it this far and you've already got like a kit where it's like, oh man, I use this camera, it allows me to fully remote control it when I'm here. It's not like a PTZ camera that looks junky. Like I want something that's pretty and has depth of field. And we've learned sending this light helps people. This tripod's always easy for people to set up. If there's anything like that you've been using that's been really effective and simple and easy for somebody to kind of configure, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. What else? Do we have anything else?
I just remembered when you talked about them having microphones. Morgan, there was something that you dealt with. We had a weird audio. It sounded like the dude had a terrible connection. There was some audio sample rate thing we encountered with Zoom, and it wasn't happening, and then it suddenly happened. What was that?
Yeah, so occasionally this bug will kind of pop up in macOS. Now we're running Mac Minis and we got Dante dongles to adapt from USB to Dante sound. So that's how our audio routing's happening. But in macOS, sometimes the sample rate gets changed, and that leads to this robot sounding bit ratey kind of sound, which we were hearing because we're monitoring everything off the audio console, which is all Dante. But how I solved or figured out it was on our end was I just joined the Zoom meeting from my phone. Once I could hear that it was completely clear there, I knew that had to be something on our end with the sample rate.
And what'd you do to fix it?
I opened the MIDI settings inside of macOS, which is a weird place to go.
Yeah.
But in there is where you set per device audio sample rate. Now, to be clear, in the UI, it was not indicating any sort of problem. It was 4,800 samples, which was perfectly normal for us. And all I did was swap it off and back on, and that fixed it. So somewhere it got maybe Zoom issued a change or something like that. It had been running all day. So it's kind of weird that it just suddenly happened.
Yeah, that's what I was noticing too. The only other thing is we had everyone on the front row, our Unity intercom systems powered by Dante, these headphones. So not really, but kind of. And we were noticing all of the intercom stuff we were using sounded all buggy too. And I was like, wait, did this all kind of come together? But I think that's just a different error.
Yeah, I think it was unrelated in that. But the sample rate was the thing to go check.
Yeah.
Or reboot the entire computer, which we didn't want to do because we're
live. Yeah, we're about to film. One thing that's really annoying when people join Zoom through a phone, it's really hard to change settings. You have to leave the meeting, and that sucks. So I think we wished we had something different than Zoom for this use case. We kind of had talked about, oh man, should we have been on Riverside or something because there were some unstable connections, but then it was like, we don't have that integrated into our setup at all. But
Riverside would have been perfect for this. And we've used that before in the past. And, we didn't say this at all, but we didn't live edit any of this. So instead we're doing all of this as a post job, which I think was the correct call, but certainly a thing there. Well, listen, we've gone through a bunch of stuff. Thanks for joining us on this episode. There's so many different pieces of this. We're all learning and growing. I think the end result worked really good. Jay, shout out to you for feeling frustrated, but then later coming in apologizing. I know that's never easy to do. And
that reminds me that Blaise said at the end of the day, he said like, oh, this is so stress-free and easy. So good job us. We didn't, didn't translate our stress onto the client, which is something we've talked about. It's got to stay in here. It stayed in here.
Right? I'm the king of saying something and then being like, well, I don't want to edit it. That was dumb.
But it's still real, and we have to have permission to have those emotions. I did want to say in closing that
you're fired.
Today's your last day, so feel free to tell it. Oh my gosh, that's funny. I did want to say, like, we do need a way to say timeout. And so we need to come up with something, maybe it's just timeout, where when we say timeout, it makes everybody have to stop as much as we possibly can, because it's like, hold on.
Let's shut the whole thing down. What's happening?
Yeah, let's just take a second,
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be good about that. So if any of us feel like, whoa, I am not sure what's happening right now, I think we need some way to call that. And maybe it's as simple, let's just try timeout and see what happens. Hey, can I call a quick timeout? Yep, give me 30 seconds, let us be able to have a little freedom there to wrap up. And then let's just make sure I'm confused about X, Y, and Z. Great. Here's what we're going to do about that to fix that. So I think we need to all feel freedom to be able to call that. Because if you don't understand it, it probably means someone else doesn't understand it, which means maybe none of us understand it, and we're all just kind of pushing ahead. So let's make sure we do that. And I think the end result that we get out of that is just very, it's going to help us all get back on the same page quicker. The other thing I want to say is anytime there's a Zoom guest, we have to then understand the production changed. It went from a little bit more organic and flowy to a little bit more high stress live. So we need to treat Zoom guest, a Zoom guest is coming. I see. Now we need to understand the pressure cooker process changes, because now it's like, well, they're coming on in 4 seconds, and we've got to be ready for them when they come on. And so in many ways, as soon as we say Zoom guest, it's kind of like we're saying it's a live event. And I didn't have that mindset, but after doing these past 2 days, I'm like, right, this is like a live event now. It doesn't have the same organic flexibility of yeah, Blaise, just a second, let me adjust your collar real quick and whatever. It's now the pressure is on, and we've got to get them in and get them out of the Zoom as quickly as possible. So, hey, we're offering consulting. So if that's something you need help with, if you are a studio that's doing some sort of virtual production or live production and you want another studio to kind of talk to, bounce off ideas, or even go in deep with you and help you get some of the results similar to what you've seen us do, we'd love to talk to you. And you can just go to SociallyU.com and there's a studio consulting menu option. Just choose that and fill out the form, and we'll schedule a Zoom call and get together with you. We'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, make sure you like and subscribe, and we can't wait to show you even more productions that are happening even later today. Thanks for watching.
Neurospace, the final frontier. These are the adventures of WFITN. Its ongoing mission: to explore the brain and all its mysteries, to develop new life-saving treatments, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Greetings, WFITN 2024. Let's have some fun as we explore the new frontiers of neurospace which we would all agree is the ultimate frontier. By the end of our journey, you will see we are boldly going where no one has gone before.